Hello everyone, this is Gian. I'm back with another video. This is just going to be a video day. Lots of videos coming out, which probably means I won't be making videos for about a week or so after today. But I just wanted to just briefly cover this. I guess it's a sort of Jean finds something and she reacts to it briefly type of day. But as you may or may not have heard of, there's been another unfortunate shooting, right? This time of a young girl. She was about 16 years old, right? And of course, this happens on the same day that Derek Chauvin is convicted in the murder of George Floyd. Now, I know that we have different opinions about the death of Floyd and whether or not Chauvin and the police are responsible, or whether the charges were just. And I respect everybody's opinion on that, even and especially if you disagree with me. But I think we can all agree on one thing, that the death of black lives is incredibly politicized. The death of really any life, right? For example, you had Stop Asian Hate like earlier this month or last month when that mass shooting happened. But as we can see, that has died out. And, the media wasn't saying anything about Asian people being attacked. Unfortunately, to be attacked at all, right? You shouldn't be attacked just because of your race for any reason. But in the case of Stop Asian Hate and all that, the attackers, more often than not, in those cases, and I've seen videos of it being in New York City, have often been by African Americans, unfortunately. But, the media can't allow the truth, right, or a more nuanced viewpoint to actually, or rather, they can't actually, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess share that type of information with the uh, viewing public, right? You can't allow the uncomfortable truths and uncomfortable questions to destroy the narrative, right? If it bleeds, it leads, as the saying goes. But I saw this, and I just want to briefly comment on it. So you have the ACLU of Ohio. Let's be honest, the ACLU has been trash for a long time now, right? They say that they're dedicated to maintaining and extending constitutional and other fundamental rights and liberties, privileges, and immunities. I think that's a noble goal. I just don't think they actually do that, right? And it says here the systems that allowed George Floyd to be murdered remain fully intact. Moments after we celebrated a win for police accountability in Minneapolis, news broke that Columbia police murdered a 15-year-old girl, black girl, I should say. Of course, they have to bring up her race because race is the narrative. The black race is the narrative, right? If you want to become famous, die while black, right? It says here that her name was M'Khia Bryant. Say her name, Black Lives Matter. I do believe that Black Lives Matter, but Black Lives first and foremost need to matter to Black people. And sadly, we don't always value our own lives or those in our community. Now, what this doesn't tell you, right, is that the Floyd situation and the M'Khia Bryant situation are completely different. George Floyd, in my opinion, was the victim of uh, excessive force used by a police officer who was noted in his department for complaints about excessive force. And that excessive force uh, caused or contributed to, right, his death. I've seen people arguing, well, Floyd would have died anyway. And maybe he would have. Maybe he would have died of his bad heart or his drug issues or his health issues, but we don't know that because he didn't live. He didn't live long enough to die of other issues, right? But here's the thing, the Floyd situation and this situation are completely different. And from what I know of, and again, this could change because information's coming out, but from what I know of this situation, what the cop did, which was shoot Miss Bryant to stop her from attacking another student with a knife. Because, see, here's what this little tweet here and this little message here doesn't show you, right? Here's a still. Here's a still from what is said to be the body cam footage of this situation, right? And you see the girl in black who was M'Khia or M'Khia. She definitely, it's pretty obvious that she has a sort of weapon in her hand. Looks like to be a knife. I'm actually surprised the body cam footage looks this good. Usually it's very grainy. But she clearly has, some sort of implement in her hand, right? Definitely something. RJ, Jesus, RJ, make up your mind. Make up your mind. Interact. Anyway, she definitely, you can see with the way her body is positioned in the thing in her hand, right? That she was definitely looking to stab the person that she's attacking, the girl in pink. And to my understanding, this is what caused the officer to fire at her. And I want to be clear. I agree firmly that this young woman should be alive today. But from what we know of, at least at the moment, her death is no one's fault but her own. And that might sound cold and callous, but again, she's armed and attacking, clearly attacking another person, right? Unfortunately, it seems in this particular situation that the cops had to take a life to save a life. And it's terrible that it happens, but this is what happens when you play a deadly game, when you attack someone with a deadly weapon. Now, who knows what these two girls were fighting over? Maybe it was a boy. Maybe she stole something. Maybe she thought she stole something. Who knows? Right? But M'Khia, unfortunately, caused or at least helped bring about her own demise because of her actions, right? I don't think, assuming that everything holds true, I don't think there's much question here. She's actively attacking another person. She's an active threat. She has every intent to seriously harm or kill this young girl who's clearly defending herself. You can tell by her body language, right? Her hands are up in her face, right? Her middle section's completely open, right? Knees are bent. This girl in the pink is not trying to fight back in any way. And unfortunately, M'Khia did something that ultimately got her killed. And as you can see here, it says here, Drinky McSip. It's an interesting name. It says her name was M'Khia Bryant and she was shot while committing attempted murder. The ACLU has become an absolute joke. And as much as it hurts me to say that, I agree. There's another thing I wanted to share about this. This is the right? And I thought I tweet a lot. Look at that, 30,000. But this is the Twitter account of Bree Newsom, right? Who is it gonna show? Is it gonna show? Hmm. But anyway, as you can see here, right, defund and abolish police, refund our communities, right? The tip, and she tweets the typical stuff that you would expect of somebody whose Twitter name or their whatever you want to call it is defund and abolish cops. But anyway, it says here, she writes here, people survive knife wounds far more than they survive police shootings. Oh, you might want to ask the boyfriend that Jody Audius stabbed to death about whether or not you'll survive, or rather, you're more likely to survive a knife wound, right? But she says here that people survive knife wounds far more often than they survive police shooting them multiple times in the chest. If the police solution to every conflict involving black and brown people is to shoot and or kill someone, we don't need police to defund and abolish policing now. Here's what I want to know. What did she expect the cop to do in this situation? Throw himself in the middle and take the stab? What does she expect this person to do when you have one person actively attacking another? Again, this isn't two teenagers standing there screaming and jaw jacking and fist pumping and all that. This is clearly in a deadly a attack with a deadly weapon, right? In progress, right? So what realistically, what was the cop supposed to do here? And I wish the girl hadn't have been hurt. I'm not happy that she's dead. I'm not happy she was shot. I'm not happy that she has a weapon in her hand, and I'm not happy that she's attacking another person. But realistically speaking, what is the officer supposed to do in this particular situation when there's at least one attacker there who is armed? There's a reason why when the police draw their weapons on an armed attacker, they say drop the weapon, put your hands up, right? So really, in this particular situation, which is completely separate from Floyd or Jacob Blake or the what's his name, Dante Wright or what, or the various cases over the past year plus now. In this case, what was the cop supposed to do? Tackle her? Tackle her and possibly get stabbed himself? I think it was a male. Was the cop supposed to tackle her? Was the cop supposed to somehow wrestle a knife from a person of size, right? She's obviously not a little kid, right? Is the officer supposed to just, teleport and just again just take the stab wound like in the movies, right? The noble officer who doesn't want to see anyone die takes the stab wound. Is he supposed to do that? Realistically speaking, what is a person, a cop or not, supposed to do in this particular situation when you're dealing with an armed attacker who's actively attacking, and the only reasonable means you have of possibly uh, doing something, intervening without getting yourself hurt, is to draw your weapon, which happens to be a gun. I just want to know what in the world he was supposed to do here, because I don't know of any other situation, any other outcome that would make sense here, right? If the police think, if the police resolution, right? Well, how about this, right? How about this? Why are we as a community of people, as a black community, still settling our differences and our fights with violence and with arms and with weaponry? Right? Again, the first people who have to value black lives are black people, because this is clearly black on black violence. So what about that, right? How about we figure out as black and brown people how to settle things without having to try to shoot or stab each other, right? Then perhaps if we can find more peaceful means of settling our differences, we won't have to call the police so much, right? The interesting thing is that unfortunately I couldn't find the tweet. I couldn't find the tweet in Miss Newsom's timeline, so maybe she deleted it, or maybe it's just buried because she's got a lot of tweets here. I don't know, but there was another one I saw where she wrote, "Teenagers have been having fights, including teenagers have been having fights, including fights involving knives for eons. We do not need police to address these situations by showing up to the scene and using a weapon against one of the teenagers. Y'all need help. I mean that sincerely." So here's my question for Miss Newsom. If the girl being attacked had been your daughter, right? If your position is, well, teenagers fight and they fight with knives and they've always been doing that. First of all, in my experience, kids usually get into a fist fight first. A kid might come back with a weapon, right? But but the initial fight is usually a fist fight, in my experience at least. And I went to an inner city school, so we had a lot of uh, I guess you would call them public safety, right? In the school, which I think did help keep us safe because it would have been a lot harder to get into a fight when you have public safety there. Although fights did happen on occasion, and as kids, we would stand and chant "fight, fight, fight," but I never heard of or saw at least any fights involving weapons when I was in high school. I'm not saying it didn't happen, but I never heard of one, and I think it's because of the presence of school police, if you want to call them that, right? But it's very easy for Miss Newsom to say this, right? To say that, oh, teenagers always fight, they always have weapons, and we don't need the cops to address it to address these situations. So we don't need the police to address situations where armed attackers are actively attacking a person and then using a weapon against one of the teenagers. One of the teenagers was using a weapon against a defenseless teenager who did not have a weapon on her. You act as if Miss Newsom is acting as if a knife is not a weapon. A knife is indeed a weapon. Ask anybody who's ever been stabbed. Ask anybody who's the family of someone who died from a stabbing. Again, Jodi Arias, she didn't shoot. At least I don't believe she shot her former boyfriend. She stabbed him to death. Right? Knives are dangerous. Knives are incredibly dangerous. Right? But it's very easy for her to say this because it's not her kid. If it were her daughter, her child, if that was her kid who was about to be killed, she would no doubt have a different tune. But that's the hypocrisy of things like these, right? You know, even when it's a situation where, at least at present, it's pretty clear why the officer acted, and the officer had to take a life to save a life, still, it's the cop's fault. I'm all for calling out the police when they're guilty and they do something wrong. We have to hold them accountable. But we have to also acknowledge when they either did the appropriate thing or they're put into a situation where, unfortunately, deadly force is the only option left to them. Or should he just stand back there and just watch a 16-year-old girl murder another 16-year-old girl and then arrest her afterwards? Right? Should he have done that? I don't know. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, I firmly disagree with Miss Newsom here. Right? So again, yeah, I wish that M'Khia Bryant was still alive. I wish that she had not been so violent in that moment that she needed to, or she felt the need to grab a weapon and to try to stab and attack another person. I wish, I wish the situation had never happened, but sadly it has. And I think that the most important thing you can be in these type of situations is honest on both sides about what happened, at least as far as we know. And unfortunately, the media today does not deal in honesty. And honestly, it seems like this young woman brought the end of her life onto herself with her own violent actions. Her actions, unfortunately, it seems, compelled another person, in this case an officer, to violence, and that violence took her life. It's sad. It's incredibly sad. It's a life lost. Who knows what she could have grown up to be? But this is what happens when you do something like this. When you are armed. And here's the thing people need to understand. This is not like the movies or like the music video for Beat It or West Side Story or whatever. When the police see you are armed, they consider you a threat and they will kill you. But anyway, that's the video. Please let me know what you think, and I'll see you all in the next one. Have a good day and night wherever you are.